Coach.com. Ken Salvail here today. Again, we're just going to be doing some seeding today, so I just wanted to show you what I do to get my seedlings started. And I got a couple of different programs here as far as soil goes. I've got some of the coconut coir product, which is actually the coconut fiber product. You can see it here. And this is the future of potting soils for everybody. This is where we need to be, this is where we need to go. Over on this side, I have the regular potting mix, which is just a product. This is a professional growing mix. It has a little bit of perlite in it, and it's made with peat moss. So basically, this is what we've been used to using, is this peat moss mix, and this is actually what I find is really great, works really well. The problem is that the peat bogs that these come from are way up in the northern Canada, and those peat bogs have been there for millions of years, and they are getting mined out. So once you mine all the peat moss, then there's none left. And so it's starting to dwindle already, so we're kind of running low, and I think it's considered a non-renewable resource. So it's something that I would say the more we can, the more we want to start shifting over to the core product, the coconut fiber, because that is renewable, and there's just tons and tons and tons of it available. It's a byproduct of the coconut industry, and yeah, it's awesome. But we'll talk a little bit more about the differences between them. I'm going to try growing some seeds in the core and some seeds in the regular potting soil, and we'll just see if there's much difference. It's going to take us a few weeks to do that, but it's going to be interesting to see. Just going to show you these trays here right now that we use. These 6-packs. These are called a 1206, and these come as an insert, so they're light as a feather. And then you pick up the trays as well, and these have no holes in the bottom at the moment because we're doing them indoors with some grow lights. So we don't want these to be leaking all over the place as we water them. And we're very, very careful with our watering, so we don't have to worry about the plants sort of flooding or anything. But this works really well. After we go from here, we'll get these plants started in here with on heated pads here. So you can see there's some of these basically they're heat pads, and what they do is they heat up to about 78 degrees Fahrenheit, and they just keep the bottom of the tray nice and toasty warm, and that stimulates the seeds to germinate. So these things are super handy to have, and they work really well. And you don't have to set anything, you just plug them in and they go automatically to that temperature between 75 and 80 degrees, somewhere in between there, and that gets you going. So that's a must when you're germinating seeds. And so what I do is I'll fill these trays first with soil, and I'll show you how I do that. And then when I do move them onto the heat, I'll put them on the heat, and then I'll let them sit for maybe a week to 10 days. And as soon as I start seeing some germination going on, they're starting to grow, and I've got pretty much full germination, then I get them off the heat, and I move some other plant into that space. So there's actually a fair bit to learn about it, the different types of plants, but that's really the secret to getting things to germinate really quickly. So now, just when we're talking about soil, I'm just going to talk about these masks, which we are getting used to wearing outside and wearing in our stores and whatnot due to the pandemic, which is nice, and it's normal and it's safe. But these guys are also useful when you're dealing with potting soils. So especially the peat moss mixes. Like, I always like to get my soil mix moistened, pre-moistened, so it's not too dusty. Anytime you get any dust involved in any of these soil products, you have to wear one of these masks, and it just helps to filter the dust out so you're not getting it in your lungs. The problem with these things is there are actually diseases that live in peat moss that are dormant in there, and sometimes you'll breathe them into your lungs and they can actually start to grow, and you can run into all kinds of problems. Quite a few people that we've heard of over the years that have got I think they call it peat moss disease, but it's a bad thing. So wear your dust masks, whether it's a regular dust mask or one of these. These seem to be everywhere these days, so why not use that? But I've pre-moistened the soil so it's no longer dusty. And so what I'm going to do at first, I'm just going to set this up the way I would normally do it, like if I was in normal greenhouse situation is that I usually set them like this, so it's very easy for me to access. So this just makes it super simple to access it, and I don't have to reach too far, so it's easier on my back. So this is also good for seeding. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the soil down the center of the flat. I'm going to need a couple scoops. And some of these are a little chunky. I think some of this is still frozen. Still middle of February, so there's a chunk of these. There we go. Of course, I got a tarp that I put out on the floor just to make sure. Alright, so I'm just going to start spreading this in a little bit, and if I find any chunks or bits of ice or anything, which I'm finding a few, then I just make sure it gets into all these cells about equally, the equal amount in each one, and then I'm going to have to pack them in a little bit. So what we do when we're doing it professionally is we have usually flat filling machines that will fill these things, and they'll fill them all really fast and they'll vibrate them. As they vibrate, they will it'll just shake all the soil right into the trays, and then they have a brush that spins and it goes underneath the brush, and the brush just takes the excess soil off the top and recycles it, which is fabulous. It makes things go way faster. Alrighty, so we're getting there. So the key is, like I was saying, is I want it to be fairly flat, and then I want to just go over it and put a little pressure on it to make sure the cells are all filled. So I have to push it in, pack a little bit. Soil's just slightly moist right now, which is just perfect. I'm just going to do that. There we go. Now I'm going to just flatten it out. So make sure any ones that look like they're a little bit low filled right up. There we go. And that is nicely filled and just lightly packed. Okay, so I'm just going to set that down there. That was just about the perfect amount of soil. So I'm going to do one with the regular soil and one with the coconut fiber. So this is coconut fiber here. And this stuff comes in compacted bricks, and which is really amazing that this stuff is quite moist because I've been moistening it. When it comes in the packs, it comes very hard, like hard as a rock. And I'll actually show you one of the bricks that I have here. They're very efficient because it can be shipped very efficiently. Quite a bit of product in each bag. So I just have to make sure I have enough. So I just put it in one of these Tupperware containers so I can add some water to it. It's very dry when you first get it. And I just want to make sure I have enough to do that. There. And same deal, I'm just gonna, and as I go through, I'm just sort of feeling it. There's little chunks that might be dry, or this takes a while to soak. It's generally preferred for the coconut core product is that you moisten it the day before you want to use it. And usually what you do is you buy the brick. Here's the brick. I just chiseled off a big chunk of it. It's literally hard as a rock, quite heavy, but this equates to 3 cubic feet, which is actually like a wheelbarrow full. So yeah, you could start breaking it down bit by bit, soaking it in water, chiseling it up a bit with a shovel. It's very, very hard to work with at first, but then once it's soft, it's just like any other potting soil. And you could add some of the white perlite to this if you wanted to. I'm just using it straight out of the package. This should be just slightly acidic. Should be, I'm not 100% sure. But the beautiful thing is like when you buy potting soils that are made of peat moss, you tend to have to use a little bit of what we would call a wetting agent, which is when you buy the products, they sometimes come with a little bit of wetting agent mixed in with the soil. So that is actually just like a soapy solution, and it breaks the skin of the water and makes it much more accepting to the water. So even though you buy it in the bale and you put it into the trays and whatnot, when you add water, it just absorbs immediately, and that's because of that wetting agent. But the thing with the coconut coir is that it doesn't need a wetting agent. It acts just like a wetting agent. As soon as water comes in contact with it, it just instantly or immediately absorbs into it. So that's what I like. The one thing I like about the coconut coir is just it acts like its own wetting agent. So it's much easier to get it wet. Okay, I'm just going to go over this one similarly. I did on the last one, just push my fingers down a little bit. So I think I have a little bit too much in this one, that's okay. So I'm just going to spread it around and get excess, put it back. There we go. Just going to make sure it's all filled and packed nicely. Oh, there's a dry piece. Put that in there. So there you go, that's basically filling the trays. And I just make sure that they're packed about the same amount in each one, approximately. Okay, so now at this point, so we have the two different types of soil. Again, I can pick this up and put it up here to make it easier to work with. And I'll just show you what I do. We do what's called dibbling the trays. And dibbling is where you just make a dent in the surface of each one. So I can just do it with my finger and just make a dent in each one. And not sure if you'll be able to see that, but you may be able to. I'll make sure there's a close up. We just put a dimple. We actually call it dibble. We usually, in the professional industry, we have what's called a dibble board. There's a leaf. There's a dibble board, and the dibble board just fits each tray, and you just put it on the top, push down, and it puts a perfect hole in the middle of each tray. So I said this was a 1206, so that means it's 12 6-packs. You can get 1204s, you can get 3201s. They're all that's what they mean, is how many cells and how many packages. So if they're 01, that means that they're single packs or single individual plants, but these are 6-packs, so it's 1206. And again, we just make those little dibbles. There's also a dibble stick that we used to use. So I just push my finger in about a half an inch into each one, like so, and then that's where we're going to put the seeds. The thing that I'm just finding as I go along here is that it's not quite moist enough for what I need to do here. So I'm just going to take my watering container, and I'll just show you a little trick here, is that if you put your thumb over the end of the watering container, and if I do this, it's okay, but it's out of control. But if I do this and put my thumb over the end of it, I can get really nice control of the water flow, and just make sure that each of these little cells has a little bit of water. Because the idea is once I put my seeds in, I'm not really going to be watering it with like a watering can anymore. I'm probably going to just use a mist bottle until the seeds are germinated. So I'll talk a little bit about seed size. And one of the keys with seed size is that if you have very tiny seeds, they can't be buried. And you can see if I had seeds in these holes and then I put water on them, the hole collapses and then the seed gets buried, which is not good. Then the seed's in darkness and it won't germinate. So tiny seeds need light to germinate. It's because they're smart, you know, they could be a foot underground. How are they going to ever make it to the surface? If they're a tiny little seed, they don't have enough food in the seed itself to make it to the surface. So that's why small seeds have to be right on the surface. So this is all I've done here now. I've got it fairly moist, and now I'll go back and I'll re-dibble it really quick just to make sure that I have a little dibble mark, and that's my target for my seeds. So depending on the type of seed, I can go at 1 seed per hole if it's a bigger seed. If it's a medium-sized seed, I can do 2 seeds per hole. Smaller seed, I usually do about 3 seeds per hole. And if it's something that's bigger, or even smaller, I may actually do more seeds per hole. If it's an annual plant, like a flowering plant, I usually do more, usually about 4 or 5 seeds per hole. So my first thing I'm going to seed is celery, and celery's got to be done early. So this is what we're going to do here today, get some celery going. And this is very, very tiny seed. It's very hard to see. I'll see if I can just show you here by coming up close. Not sure if you're going to be able to see that or not, but maybe. But those are tiny little seeds, and hopefully you can see those. So tiny seeds, I don't want to bury them. So very important. So I'm going to keep them in the package, and I'm just going to sprinkle a couple, 2 or 3 in each hole. And the idea with the dibble, the little dent, is that it keeps moisture down in that hole, so that the seed stays moist. But because air, if you put it on the surface of the soil, the air sort of dries them out a bit. But when they're in a little dibble like that, in a little hole, they still get light, but they stay nice and humid. So that's how you sort of get those going. So I'm not too worried about how many go in here, but see, each of these, I can also break these apart and make a few, I can, what's called pricking them apart, which is where you take each one and split it up. And that's generally the way to go. I think I'm just going to complete this flat with the celery, just because it's so good. When you grow your own celery, it's just nothing like the store-bought stuff, so that's what I like to do. A little tap there, and oh, there we go. Done. Okay, so that's a full flat of celery. Just gonna grab my stakes. So again, I try to use wooden stakes because they're more decomposable. These have colored, different colors on them, and I always have a felt pen handy. And this is my Utah. It's called Tall Utah, and that's the variety that I'm going to write on here. Celery, there you go. And I always put the date that it's seeded as well on there. I think I'll just put it on the back, so let's say this is February 15th. 13th. And just put that in there, like that. Alright, so now that tray now is ready to go, and I'm not going to bury those seeds. I'm just going to put that right onto the flat, right onto these heated bottles. And then you see here, I'll just put this on top, a little bit of a mist. That's how I'm going to water it now to get those seeds moistened. So, and those guys will start to absorb that moisture and then start to grow. So nice warm bench there. So we're going to do a similar thing with this one. This is our core product. We're just going to do this really quick. These ones are already quite moist. I really heavily soak these, the coconut fiber. Like so, put my dibble marks in there. There we go. And I'm going to pick the next one, which one of my favorites of all time is the Paris. It's called Paris Island Cause romaine lettuce. If any of you saw my videos from last year, awesome lettuce. Oh my god, does this stuff grow beautiful. So again, this I need lots of this this lettuce. It's so beautiful, and I'm just going to put about 3 seeds per hole approximately. So I go back, and if I find any that I dump too many in, I just move them around to a hole that has maybe not as many in it. So these are actually more like about 5 seeds per hole, but that should be all right. We'll see how they come up, but we have more seeds in here yet. So it's going to be for a secondary run, and we may be sharing these as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these grow. So again, I'm going to just give these a watering, and these guys, because they're a little bit bigger seed, I'm okay if I water these in and they get a little bit buried. It's all good. So that's what I'm going to do. Make sure those seeds have a little bit of moisture, a little bit of light covering. So you can tell by the size of the seed whether they need to be covered or not. Go. There we go. All right. That's the cause lettuce. Oops. Romaine. Onto the heat it goes. And a quick mist just to make sure that all the seeds are with some moisture. That's it. So there you go, that's the first step. So these seeds that we're doing right now are either very early because they're a long late crop like the celery. Celery takes a long time to grow, so you got to start it early. And then you have to grow it indoors all the way until you get into early May. And then once you're into early May, you can plant them outside, at least here in the Okanagan. That's how we go. The lettuce is a cold crop, so it likes to grow cold. So I'm going to get it up and get it germinated in here. And once it's germinated and looking good, then off we go. We'll send it out to our greenhouse, out to the geodome, and you'll probably see some videos of it growing out there as well. So that's it for today. Hopefully you learned something about seeding today. And remember to tune in regularly, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great day.